Welcome back to another episode of the Make Disciples podcast. My name is Dan Rober, and joining me today in the podcast studio is our executive director, David Pinson. David, good to have you here.
Glad to be here.
You know, I'm realizing that I have never asked you this question before. How do you feel about Dave?
Having grown up around a lot of people that were, sorry to use the term, Yankees.
Yes.
My name got shortened to Dave all the time, so I actually got very accustomed to it. So I'm good with that.
Okay.
But it might confuse McNeely some. So we might want to clarify who's Dave, who's David. McNeely looks a little more like a Dave to me.
Okay.
Don't you think?
I could see that.
You could see that?
Yeah, that would make sense.
So yeah, I'm good with that.
Okay. I'm just
now everyone will be calling me this. Thanks, Dan.
Yeah. Well, we can cut that section. So we'll cut that section so that no one does that anymore. Okay. Well, we're so glad that you're joining us here for the podcast. All we're doing here is doing some introductions. We want people to know who is on staff here and the work that we do, but also we want to just share our stories, because beyond being on staff and having the ability to work full time for our cause here, we're here because Jesus has changed our lives.
Yeah.
And so we want people to know about that. So why don't you take a moment and just talk a little bit about your role here, how long you've been at Wildwood, and what you do as the executive director.
Yeah. So we have been at Wildwood, I think, for about 14 or 15 years. It's interesting. When Bama and I first got married, we were at the Chuck E. Cheese. When I was in college, I actually visited down when the church was on Meridian. And so we were here when we moved into what is now the Fellowship Hall, when it was the original sanctuary. So that was around 96, 97. We were at Four Oaks for a little while. And that brought us back in, I think, 2013-ish. I'm guessing if Bama was here, she'd probably know spot on what it was. But my role here really is one of sort of caring for the staff. That's kind of the way it was presented to me early on. Was I'm supposed to be sort of like the pastor to the staff. I'm not an ordained pastor, but that's why I'm an executive director and not an executive pastor. Yeah. And so that's really the way I see my role, is trying to equip them, help them, pray with them, make sure that they are cared for well, that their voice is represented in places where it should be represented. And then on top of that, there's other administrative types of work that I do, very similar to what I did when I was a head of school. So those are some of the parts of my role here and some of the things that I do, and a little bit about our journey, Bama's and our family's journey, in our quest to find a church home, and we've been here for a while. We love it. I grew up in the PCA, so it's a very much a part of kind of who I am as a believer.
Yeah. And as you mentioned, you came here from being the leader at the church or at the school, CCS. So for those who know that school, you come to us from that institution. And we have a number of families who attend that school as well. Well, let's talk a little bit about your faith story. What led you to Jesus, to be a follower of Jesus?
Yeah. Christian education has always been a part of my story. I think it's one of the reasons why I gravitated into that field. I grew up just west of here in Quincy and was involved with a Christian school from first grade through 12th grade. As a matter of fact, I had 22 kids in my graduating class, and 11 of them were with me the whole time.
Wow.
And as a part of that experience through the Christian school, in my senior year, actually came to know Jesus as a part of a spiritual emphasis week. And it was, I grew up in that setting, and so I kind of knew the ropes, right? You kind of sang the songs and knew the scripture passages, but this time it was different. And I remember specifically, usually you kind of would pray a prayer and you'd raise your hand or something like that. Everybody's eyes were closed. But in this instance, the guy called us forward and actually asked everybody to open their eyes and look at us. And he said to us, as we were standing there, God is going to hold you accountable to what you're doing here today, your decision today. And that was different. And I really credit that school, that little school, in being very instrumental in me coming to know the Lord. And then after that, getting involved with more faith-based things, plugging into my church more, was the first youth director at the church for a while. And then when I looked at sort of a career and was thinking about going into law or going into seminary, I started thinking, especially when I got into seminary, we were married at the time, and what could I do to provide, and where could I minister effectively, right even when I was in seminary. And the Christian school was where I kind of saw my vector. So I got into education, and I always saw it as an opportunity for me to do for students what so many people had invested their lives in me. They invested their lives in me, and that investment yielded faith. Certainly the Lord was a part of that and calling me, but their work, I wanted to do that. I wanted to have that impact in the lives of students, and that was just, as I said, Christian education's always been a part of my faith story.
Yeah, it's an amazing legacy of faith, and you don't always have the ability as a teacher to hear about those results, and so I'm sure it's encouraging for all the teachers listening to know that your work does matter, and it's making an influence in ways that you may not even experience. Well, let's talk about your move to Wildwood. What led you from a role in leading CCS to being on staff here full time?
One of the things that I have always done is sought out Darwin Box. Darwin's been a mentor to me for a long time, still continues to be a mentor to me. And when we got through COVID, I began looking. COVID was a hard time for all leaders.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter where you're at. Leaders here, certainly leaders in the school. And I just started getting a sense of, was God really sort of calling me to a new season? And as I was having conversations with Darwin, I remember we were at Lucky Goat, and I was sharing all these things with him and talking about things that I had wanted to do, everything from teaching at the college level to doing some sort of executive role somewhere. And as we were discussing, sort of the whole idea of would you be interested in doing something like this in church? I said, well, I would consider that. And I won't share the entire long drawn out story, but as the church was looking for someone, we started having conversations, and I came to this group and essentially said, look, I just want to be useful. I want to do something kingdom oriented where I can be useful as a part of that process. And after coming in and talking to them for a while, we both believed that God may be calling me here. And certainly there was a time of prayer, discussion with Bama as well. But I really felt like I could continue contributing to the kingdom here, and that God was calling me here. For how long, I didn't know, but that was the next step for me. I will have to say that education still is very much in my heart. And I've had conversations even about the church's role and how could we be more a part of education within the community. But I felt like I shared this with someone one time. It's like when your church asks you to step in and help them and to serve them, you can't really get much of a clearer call from the Lord than that. And that's what sort of led me here. And I stepped into this role in mid 2022, and I was actually still working at the school, and then came on full time in 2023, and I have tried to hopefully do some things that are helping us get better at being able to provide ministry to our community as well as to our church.
Yeah. And we're certainly thankful that you're here. And I resonate with your call towards education and academia as well, as we have talked about before. Well, in vain of what you just said, let's dream for just a moment. What is your hope for Wildwood? What would you love to see Wildwood become in the next several years?
Yeah. Well, I know that Pastor David and I have sort of had this conversation a little bit, and if you ever go into my office, you'll see generally somewhere a lighthouse. I love the motif, the image of a lighthouse, and I would love for us to be a place that, on the one hand, we're wrapping our arms around our congregation and caring well for them, loving them well, a place of unity, community, that with our staff as well, that we're growing together in the Lord. But at the same time, we're like a lighthouse, we're kind of reaching out to be a place of safety and security and hope for the world. And I think that motif, even though Pastor Dave and I have talked, he thinks it's a little overused, and I get that. But I love that whole idea of, even though it's a solid place, solid on a rock, but it's here. It's a steady place where we can have a sense of this is home for us. This is a foretaste of what we will experience one day. I hope that we will begin getting more and more aligned with that whole idea of this is a foretaste of heaven. This is a foretaste of what is to come, not just for our community here that meets on Sundays and in groups and throughout the week, but also as you reach out through things like OFS and things from the community center, that we're inviting people into a foretaste of heaven. I think that is my hope for us. And if we are continuing to make progress there, we're never going to perfect it this side of heaven. But if we're continuing to make progress on being that place where people can come and, on the one hand, hear the gospel, receive the gospel, and have people going after them for the gospel, but at the same time have the hand on the shoulder, the hug around the neck, the I'm sitting here to cry with you, rejoice with you, that for us, I think, would be a sweet spot, and that would be my best hope.
Yeah, it's a good hope to have. And I want to say thank you. Thank you for being here.
Yeah.
And thank you for telling us your story. We love to hear stories because, yes, we're on staff here, but more than that, Jesus has got a hold of us, and we're giving our lives over for the cause of the gospel and the growth of the kingdom. And so we love to hear your stories as well. We love to hear how God got a hold of you and how he has been moving even recently in your life. And if you want to share your story with us, you can go to wildwoodtlh.com/story. And there's this quick and simple form that you can fill out to let us know how God is moving in your life. So thank you, Dave, for being here. David, for being here. And thank you for joining us for this episode of the Make Disciples podcast.